Before we begin, since this is a BBC-owned property, I feel the need to point out that the news arm of the BBC has a continuing issue with transphobic leanings in its news coverage. You can find in a pinned comment below various videos from both myself and other YouTubers covering this issue. And while I understand that the Doctor Who creative team is not responsible for this, I will continue to point this out for as long as it remains a consistent issue. Thank you. It helps to make the right entrance. Hey there, folks. Feel like doing another Doctor Who list. And this is one that, honestly, I should have done a long time before this. Because almost 4 years ago now, like when I was still wearing the flat cap, I did a video on what I thought were the best exits for companions on modern era Doctor Who. I never talked about their best introductions, the best debuts. What companion made the best first impression? So I'm going to make up for that. Now, let me clarify what I mean by companion for this, because I tend to use a slightly different definition depending on the nature of the video. So in this instance, we are talking about anyone where the actor ever had their name appear in the opening credits, but we are not counting one-off companions in specials. That's the one thing that we're not doing. So discounting that, that's our criteria. So we've got a fair few of these to get through. And also, before I get started, let me note, this is by no means an indication of who I think is actually the best companion. Some companions I don't really like, gave great initial impressions. Some companions who I love did not make particularly good initial impressions. This is going to be all over the place. And it's also even not strictly speaking a judgment on the story they were introduced in, but more about how they come across as a character when they are first introduced. That's what I'm focusing on here. Let's do it. Number 16, Mickey. And no, he's not this low because of any personal feelings I might have about Noel Clarke. He is this low because, honestly, who the heck had a positive notice of Mickey in his first appearance? I actually, just the companion, I do like Mickey as a character. But when he was first introduced, well, first of all, there's the thing that you wouldn't have guessed he would eventually become, at least briefly, a companion and travel with the Doctor. But more than that, he's irritating. And he's a side note. His endangerment is played for laughs, and it's just not great. I didn't come away at any point thinking, boy, hope we get more of that character. I was actually kind of thinking, boy, they really don't know how to make any good use of that character. Can we not have him again? Now, my opinion did change once he started showing up more. But yeah, initial impression on Mickey was pretty bad. It was about the worst. Number 15, Nardo, coming in only slightly ahead of Mickey. Like, it's real close. And if you ask me on a different day, I might even swap them. But again, I really like Nardo. I actually think he is severely underappreciated as a companion, just as a character unto himself, but also as part of the dynamic with Bill and the 12th Doctor. I actually like him a lot. His introduction was not good, though, because his introduction was in The Husbands of River Song as the comedic side character. And you could argue he remained primarily a comedic side character even as he became a companion and was traveling with the Doctor. But the thing is, that was all he was here. And he was a shrieking comedic side character. They didn't bother to write a decent character, and they just expected Matt Lucas to make the delivery entertaining. And he's trying, bless him, but you need an actual character for him to build off of. This in and of itself, no. Number 14, Clara. Now, I need to be real specific about this. What I'm counting as Clara's introduction is the introduction of the version of Clara that actually travels with a companion. So, we are not counting Oswin. We are not counting the governess, both of whom make much better first impressions than the actual Clara who traveled with the doctor, who basically comes off as a blank slate. I will never stop being annoyed at Moffat for this, because he wrote 2 earlier versions of Clara that I felt like I got a sense of who they are and a sense of their characterization almost immediately, and there was so much injected into them that really made me interested in them and made me kind of go, oh, I wish that they were sticking around. And then the version of Clara that actually traveled with us, he just didn't bother to do anything. I think he kind of assumed or hoped that people would just take what they'd seen in the other versions of Clara and project it as characterization onto this version. Unfortunately, that only makes sense in hindsight because we didn't know why there were multiple versions of Clara. We didn't know that these other versions were splintered off and variants of this one core main one. Rewatching it works slightly better if you know that, but we didn't know that initially. We didn't know what the hell was going on. As far as we were concerned, this is a whole new person that you did not bother to characterize at all. She has very little personality, very little brought across in terms of her hopes, her dreams, her goals. She's just there to banter a little bit and run around. It's a really bad first impression and made all the worse because we know Jenna Coleman can nail a first impression. We saw her do it twice already, and then this. Ugh. Number 13, Wilf. This one's basically on the list just to prove that I'm not strictly just biased in terms of I'm putting ones I don't like lower or ones that I do like higher, because Wilf's one of my favorite companions. I absolutely adore Wilf. But his initial intro is really just a couple of gags. You know, it's him manning the little newsstand and yelling at the Titanic, "Oh, you aliens!" But it's cute. It's sweet. It's not anything that I thought, I want to see more of him. Now, when he did come back, I'm like, oh, this is great. But I was not left wanting more. And I certainly wasn't left going, oh, I hope he actually travels with the doctor. Now, when he did, it was amazing. But since nothing about his first impression really left me with a desire for more of that character or ever thinking that there would be a reason to want him around, it's just kind of a, oh, okay. Well, that's a thing. Numbers 12 and 11, Ryan and Graham. So I tried to separate them out, but honestly, I'm just going to lump them together because I can't justify putting one slightly over the other, even though it's not like they never have separate scenes from each other. It's not like I never got a little bit of a sense of the difference between the two or anything like that. It's just, they always really felt like a package deal, and I can't really think of why one would go over the other. So here they are. And the thing is, there really just isn't much there aside from the performance chemistry between the actors, which is decent. It's pretty solid. The thing is, ultimately, they both have better performance chemistry with Grace. So the first impression that they left me with went down as soon as she died, because I'm like, I actually would have rather had her in the TARDIS. And we've got you two instead. All right. It's not bad, so to say, but not something that left me going, ooh, can't wait for more journeys with these folks. Yeah. Number 10, Yasmine Khan just slightly edges out Ryan and Graham because I just feel like while, honestly, Series 11 does not take proper advantage of what characterization she is given, she's a little bit better characterized in this first appearance than they are. Now, you could certainly argue that either one of them, or I guess more likely Graham, has a bit more charismatic personality by value of the performer, but in terms of characterization and get a sense of who she is and getting a sense of why she might choose to continue traveling with the doctor. I mean, granted, at the end of that first episode, all three of them aren't planning to keep traveling, but I kind of get the impression from her right off that if the doctor had not accidentally just beamed them all out into space and just said, do you want to travel with me? She would have been the one that went, yes, immediately. And Graham and Ryan, like it would have been, well, maybe not, but she absolutely would have. And I got enough of a sense of her character in that first appearance to feel comfortable saying that. That says a little something. Not a lot, but a little. Number 9. Donna. This one hurts for how low it is, but look, within the scope of her full character arc, and keep in mind, depending on when you watch this, like, bear in mind that at time of recording and release, the specials with her returning are not out. So how that impacts her arc and my thoughts on it, I don't know. But within her standard time within the TARDIS and how her character arc goes, I totally get why she starts out the way she does. Why she starts out this abrasive, this loud, this, frankly, irritating and unlikable.
Get me to the church!
Because she is irritating. And I didn't like her. Now, again, I understand the value of that over the course of her arc. It's a bit like how Luke Skywalker's real whiny when you start out. You don't see him immediately that, boy, I want to stay around and find out more about your adventures. Like, no, but he also changes and grows and becomes more interesting. And Donna has a much better arc than Luke Skywalker, so I don't even know why I made that comparison. But it did mean that her first impression is real grating. And even after falling in love with her, going back and trying to watch Runaway Bride, it's rough. It's painful, if I'm being honest. It's aspects of her that I like, but are just dialed up so much they become irritating. And the balance hits much better once she is when she's actually traveling with 10, and then she just becomes a more interesting, more empathetic, more fascinating character as it goes. But yeah, that did mean we had to start from a rough place. And we did. Number 8, Rory. Perfectly serviceable first introduction. It's just that you don't really notice him so much because he's to the sideline and we're mainly dealing with Amy. Now, arguably, that was also kind of the case with Mickey, so you might be wondering why Rory is so much higher on the list than Mickey is. Well, largely because we actually get a proper sense of Rory's dynamic with Amy and why maybe they're kind of good together. And we may not have known it at the time, not knowing that he was going to be traveling with them, but we get an early taste of his dynamic with the Doctor, of what that'll be like. And I like their dynamic. I like the dynamic of all three of them, but I also like the dynamic between the Doctor and Rory. Mickey, his first impression really gives no indication of any of the decent stuff that's going to come later from him. Rory does at least have that going for him. Again, he's deeply overshadowed by everything else going on in 11th Hour, and that's not even really a criticism of all the stuff going on in 11th Hour, of all the things that needed to be introduced and established and laid out for an audience, whether they were new or returning, given this new era. Like, he got as much attention as he should have had. But it does mean that as far as first impressions as a character go, he's just bat in the middle. Number 7, Bill. I like Bill a lot. I even more than Nardo, I think Bill is an underappreciated companion. I think Bill's fantastic. I absolutely adore her dynamic with Capaldi. I adore her inquisitive nature and her enthusiasm. She reminds me more than a little bit of Ace, and Ace is one of the best companions from Classic. And she has a really good intro here. And there's an extra layer in this intro, because oftentimes the introduction of the companion is laying out what it is about them that is going to draw the Doctor to them and make the Doctor want to travel with them by the end of the episode. The thing is, the Doctor's already kind of drawn to her at the start, technically before the start of this thing at all. Because he talks about, I've seen you in my class.
Well, most people, when they don't understand something, they frown. You smile.
And I like that he's already intrigued by her, and he's already thinking, there's something to work with here. And it just establishes their dynamic and their banter and their chemistry really well. I'm not sure it does all that much to establish a ton about Bill in terms of a character in her own right, but it does a great job establishing the dynamic that is going to be the status quo moving forward for them as a traveling companion couple. And I think it does that exceptionally well. So here it is. Number 6, Dan. At time of recording, I've only fairly recently rewatched Halloween Apocalypse. And I don't have a ton of good things to say about it, but you know what? Dan is well introduced. He's actually very thoroughly characterized. Right from his first introduction, where we see him talking about Liverpool, you can clearly see how much passion he has for this town and for his home. And then you get a sense of his dynamic with other people as he has his interactions with Di, and then later at the food pantry. And you also get the sense of like he wants to help, and he's more than happy to help others, but he's really bad at accepting help. Like, forget asking for help. He won't even accept it when offered, when frankly, he could use it. And then there's just the inherent charisma brought about by the actor. It makes him lovable, as he is just kind of overwhelmed by what's going on, but not in a not in a freaking out way, which is never really that interesting, but just in a what the heck? What the heck is going on kind of way, which is like just the right amount of flummoxed for me. I think in terms of who Dan is as a character and how thoroughly he is introduced and how well characterized and how many sort of shades and elements of him we get introduced in a pretty small amount of time, it's a really well-handled intro. It's one of the only well-handled things in that episode, but hey, credit where credit's due. Number 5, Rose. I am not nearly as enamored of Rose as a lot of fans, especially fans my age. But her introductory episode starts with her rather than starting with the Doctor, and it works. We get a sense of who she is. We get a sense of the ennui of her life. We get a sense of her lack of fulfillment, and then we get a sense of her being pulled towards the questions, towards the danger, towards the adventure. And we get to experience the Doctor initially very much through her eyes. And so in this first episode, we actually get to know her better than we get to know the Doctor. And honestly, if somebody else wanted to put her introduction towards the top, I wouldn't necessarily say they're wrong. Part of it comes down to personal preference. Rose is not my favorite companion. So while I think she is very well characterized, I'm not a huge fan of Rose as a character, but again, credit where credit's due. They establish exactly what they needed to make her work and make you care about her even before you know what the heck is going on with the Doctor. It's really good. Number 4, Jack. Again, not going to talk about the actor, but actually, first of all, let me say these last 4, I could have reordered. Like, these last 4 were really tough to come up with an order for. But number 4 is going to be Jack. Because, first of all, it's an amazing 2-parter. The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances are some of my favorite episodes. They are my favorite episodes of the first series. And he is just really well introduced as charming, suave, thinks he's in control, gets flustered and annoyed when he realizes he's not. A little bit dashing, a little bit dangerous, heavily flirty. This is who Jack is. It lays it out very clearly and in a way that he could have stayed in this episode. He could have not continued to appear, not travel with the Doctor, not come back at later times. But the reason it works that he does is because his intro was this good. You really do get the sense of what he adds to the dynamic, what he brings that Eccleston's Doctor especially doesn't have, this sense of more swashbuckling adventure. And that's not a deficit on Eccleston's part that he doesn't have that, but it brings an extra dynamic to the group. And whatever you think about John Barrowman, I've got my thoughts. Dude's really charming, dude's really charismatic, and that is effectively what this character needed at its heart, and it's there. And it's there from the outset. He is magnetic, he's charming. It's really hard not to fall in love with him. Number 3, Martha. Martha Jones. First of all, underappreciated companion. Second of all, really underappreciated intro. This is a scientifically, precisely calculated introduction for her as a companion. For us to get a sense of her as a person studying to be a doctor, in terms of the things that intrigue her and how the Doctor is drawn to her because she asks the right questions. So kind of like how Bill was intrigued by the right things, but didn't necessarily know the most appropriate question to ask, which would sometimes flummox the doctor and was fun in its own way. But Martha does know the right questions to ask. She doesn't know the answers yet, but she wants them. And therefore, the doctor gets drawn to her. And a bit like Rose's introductory episode, we spend, actually, I think, a little more time with her than with the doctor. This is really focused on getting you to know her, sell you who she is, why she's interesting, why she's admirable, why she's fun. And it does it. It just does. It is phenomenally effective at introducing her as a character and her dynamic with Tennant. It's just really good. Number 2, Amy. I'm seriously often just in awe of the 11th Hour as an episode, doing everything that it does and doing it so well. And I love the way that this is handled. Her introduction to the doctor. So you get a sense of why she has this awe of him. But at the same time, because he left her there for years.
This is important. Why did you say 6 months?
Why did you say 5 minutes?
She's kind of fed up with his nonsense at the same time as she is absolutely drawn to him and fascinated by him and pulled to him. But she's also like, don't mess with me, dude. You've ticked me off once before already. And just the tiny moments with her interactions with other people, like, she's a kissogram, but like some guy's trying to get to his car and she's kind of blocking his way, and she just tells him,
In a bit now, go and have coffee.
Right.
and he knows her. He's like, Amy, and she just commands him away. That's who she is in this town. She just runs this town by sheer force of personality. And you see that again with Rory and the way that he responds being around her. Her interactions with not just the doctor, but everyone else that she says hi to or interacts with at all, you get a full sense of who she is as a person, who she is to these other people, who she is in this town, that she is just so many things orbit around her because she is so charismatic. Of course, everybody has a sense of what their place is with her, and they know it, and she knows it, and it's really well established. And it's really fun. And number 1, River Song. Whatever you think about what happened with River's story, about its highs, its lows, its middles, her introduction was brilliant. The way in which she is able to carry the weight of the excitement of seeing the doctor again, the pain at realizing he doesn't recognize her, the tragedy of the sacrifice that she makes, the flippant chemistry that she has with him, even though this version of him doesn't know her, she's still slipping into that very clearly for her very comfortable dynamic that he doesn't know yet.
We're all gonna die right here, and you're just squabbling like an old married couple.
This is just an amazing introduction to a character. To bring her in, and she knows what's going on, but he doesn't. And to see how that impacts her. Because it's not just a matter of he doesn't know, oh, she knows more than him. No, the fact that he doesn't know has a clear effect on her. And the effect that it has tells you a lot about her. And so much about how she carries herself, how she is commanding very clearly, even though she's not technically in charge of the expedition. And all these other things, it's all there. She is a complete package, and you get a sense of who she is going to be as a companion just within this one story, just within this 2-parter, even though she doesn't actually travel with this doctor in it. And she never travels with this specific doctor, not that we see. It's phenomenally well balanced. This is a razor's edge of efficient, intriguing, fun, tragic. This is just brilliant. And again, I know some people complain about River partly because it's like, oh, it's the female character that Moffat always writes. And I get that criticism, and I'm not going to argue against it. But one, I happen to kind of like that female character archetype. And 2, structurally, I would still argue this is really smart and really well portrayed. So that's my number one. What do you think? How would you rank this? How wrong do you think I am? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon is what pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. And also, if you support me there, you get early access to the videos. You get to look at the docket a month early. You get to vote in polls, etc., etc., etc. But don't worry too much about it. Because what I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. No matter how you come into the story, remember that you are the council, and I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Massive thanks to my Patreon supporters, and in particular, I want to thank Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Oliver B., Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, Leotha Boyd, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabilex the Poodle, Robin Powell, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Caspero, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, David Hall, Shayla Gourlay, and Rosalind Bennett. Thanks for your support. You can get your name in the credits too if you feel like hearing me possibly struggle with it for several times before getting it right.